Massachusetts misconduct. Faulty breathalyzer equipment puts 27,000 OUI convictions at risk. Now, a lot of people try to downplay things. You know, people love downplaying things. Let me tell you something, though. There's no way to downplay this. You have 27,000 OUI convictions that are at risk because of faulty breathalyzers. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what that's actually saying to you? That's saying that 27,000 people, or just any combination of people that led up to that 27,000, up to that 27,000 number, can have their convictions overturned. Do you understand how much that's going to cost the taxpayers there in Massachusetts? You have any idea how many lives that has potentially ruined? You're talking about, let's just, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the actual story here, I want to explain to you the implications of all this. You're talking about 27,000 cases, whereas OUI convictions have been overturned, man. 27,000 cases where OUI convictions can be overturned. That means that there were custody battles that were decided. There were jobs that were lost. Some people's place of living as a condition to staying at that place was to be completely alcohol free, and without DUI convictions or anything that's related to alcohol or anything dealing with a substance, right? You're talking about a lot of cases that affects multiple facets of life. You know, living, employment, child custody, your ability to have upward mobility in your place of work. This is beyond the scale. This is beyond the scale. So let's get a little bit deeper into this story, man, because I want you guys to see how bad this gets, man. Tens of thousands of Massachusetts residents convicted of driving under the influence will get a second chance following a ruling from the state's highest court citing egregious government misconduct and poorly calibrated breathalyzer equipment. The roughly 27,000 defendants who pleaded guilty or were convicted in operating under the influence cases that included breath test results from the Alcotest 9510 device from June 1st, 2011 through April 18th, 2019, quote, are entitled to a conclusive presumption of egregious government misconduct, end quote, Justice Frank M. Gazzanio wrote in the Supreme Judicial Court opinion in Commonwealth v. Hallinan issued Wednesday. So a Supreme Justice has said all people, all 27,000 of these people are entitled to a conclusive presumption of egregious government misconduct, according to a justice in that state. Listen, this is going to be enormously expensive for the taxpayer. The taxpayers will have to pay out these police misconduct settlements because that's what's going to have to happen. That's what's going to automatically have to happen here. If you cannot rely on the results of these tests, right? If you can't rely on the results of these tests and you can't rely on their accuracy, and people have lost their jobs, people have lost custody, people have lost a lot of things in life based on these tests. Well, it all must be overturned. These people's lives must be made whole. You have to assume that they are all innocent. If everything that was used to convict these people in a court of law, if everything wasn't in place, if every T not crossed, every I dotted, exonerated. That's how our system works. But especially when you have a Supreme Justice saying, hey, these tests were inconclusive. These tests were faulty. And the officials knew about it. The police knew about it. The police, the prosecutors, this guy didn't say just police misconduct. He said egregious government misconduct. Egregious. 27,000 people convicted based on faulty breathalyzer tests. The history behind this ruling can be traced at least as far back as 2015, with consolidated litigation challenging the reliability of breath test machines. That litigation led to an investigation by the State Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, which released a report in October 2017 that found the State Office of Alcohol Testing had failed to turn over 400 documents to defense attorneys showing tests in which the breathalyzer machine employed by the OAT, the Draeger Alcotest 9510, had failed to properly calibrate. The office's director at the time of the misconduct, Melissa O'Meara, was fired, and the district attorneys across the state stopped using the Alcotest results in their prosecution. So this woman, she had to be fired. She was over the that's amazing. She's over the Massachusetts Office of Alcohol Testing, right? And when told to turn over documents, she failed to turn over 400 documents to defense attorneys so that they could defend their clients from these lies, from these false convictions. She not only didn't do that, she just totally ignored it, and she was covering up. She was covering up the fact that she knew these tests were faulty, and she was covering that up. She was covering that up. Wow. Wow. Do you understand what this means? 27,000 people's lives were ruined by this woman and police officers and sheriff's deputies and all law enforcement in Massachusetts. They all knew about this. They all knew about it. Because if these people weren't actually drunk, why would you even administer a test? First of all, to administer a test, you have to actually at least show some reason to. Do you just walk up to some random person and just start administering, breathalyzer tests? So it's not just this one woman here, Melissa O'Meara. It's also every police officer who has to know these people were not drunk. But the police officers don't care, because an arrest is an arrest and a quota is a quota. The prosecutors, they also knew. They all knew. There's no way you're going to pin this on just one or two people. 27,000 people? And you're going to tell me that only one person is responsible. Really? Really? Wednesday's SJC ruling was well received by defense attorneys, with the Committee for Public Counsel Services calling it, quote, a victory for the thousands of people who have been living with tainted convictions and for those who believe the government should be accountable for its actions, end quote. Quote, once again, the Supreme Judicial Court has been forced to tackle a scandal raising serious doubts about the reliability of forensic evidence and the government's failure to disclose invaluable exculpatory evidence to defendants, end quote. CPCS Chief Counsel Anthony Benedetti wrote in a statement. Those convicted in cases involving the test can file to withdraw guilty pleas and motion for new trials in which the old breathalyzer results are barred from use. So, without those tests, every one of these cases should be overturned, especially if the government has been shown to have engaged in malfeasance. Even if, let's say that you have body camera footage, right? Oh, well, this person is clearly drunk. This person is clearly drunk. Even in that case, I have to assume that person is innocent only because there was government corruption involved. These cases are forever tainted. The government can never pursue these people for these types of charges. And any kind of charges these people have gotten like this so far have to be overturned. It's not about it's not about trying to punish a person at this point. It's making sure a person is made whole when the government engages in corruption. Now, granted, let's say that you have a police officer who engaged in some, undisclosed, unrelated corruption, or a prosecutor, let's say a prosecutor was engaged in some unrelated political, in some unrelated political corruption. Sure, the charges should still stand because the person did something. And that government corruption is unrelated to their charges. But if in any way that corruption is related directly to those charges, you have to drop all charges. So 27,000 people should be getting paid right now, compensated for their pain and suffering, their emotional distress. The government, police, prosecutors, lawyers, they all knew. The only people who probably weren't in on it were some of the defense attorneys and the general public. But more people than just one or two people knew about this. Because, like I said, if these tests were faulty and you got people like Melissa O'Hara or Melissa O'Meara, the person there who was over the Office of Alcohol Testing, besides her, I'm just trying to think in Massachusetts, why would you use a test like that on a random citizen if you are a police officer? So you have to actually walk up to a person and use that test on them to reasonably determine in that moment, besides a standard field test, put your finger on, all that silly stuff. You have to have some reason to walk up to a person or pull them over and just use that test, right? So if these tests were faulty and these people were indeed falsely accused and falsely convicted, and it certainly looks that way. It certainly looks that way. It certainly looks that way. Then these police officers should be thrown behind bars too, because they're liars. They knew these tests were bad, and that's why they probably used them, because it's an easy way to fill quotas. See? Do you see what's happening here? See, the government loves doing that. If the government loves, they love finding one or two fall guys to pin everything on. See, they put it out there. Oh man, it's this Melissa O'Meara person, She was the head of the Massachusetts Office of Alcohol Testing. It's all her. Don't look behind the curtain. Who hired her? Who knew that she was like this? This woman has been lying and covering up things for this long and nobody knew? See? People don't ask these kinds of questions with these kinds of stories. Right? Nobody asks these questions. 27,000 lives changed. Because even with this news, right, there's been cases of massive corruption being revealed, but that doesn't necessarily change a person's legal status, because the government is slow to change. This is the country that we live in. This is the country that we live in, man. So this one is a fascinating story. New Jersey State Police accused of promoting white male troopers over minorities. This one, wow. Well then, this is what we call mask off. New Jersey State Police have been accused of workplace violations by 17 current and former troopers who alleged in lawsuits that they experienced discrimination, retaliation, and harassment because they belong to minority groups. Allegations in the law firm's documents cite the lawsuits. Shared with Newsweek, the documents portray a work environment with the New Jersey State Police that promotes white men over qualified minorities, despite the former's histories of DUIs and harassment. Whoa! So you have officers with a history of DUI and harassment who get promoted over qualified people who happen to be a little bit darker, Because they're white men. How typical. How typical. The documents in the troopers describe a workplace condoned by Superintendent Patrick Callahan, who was appointed acting superintendent in 2017 by former GOP Governor Chris Christie. The Marshmallow Man himself, and was nominated for the position by Governor Phil Murphy, a Democrat, in 2018. Although Callahan has faced criticism in the past over his leadership, Murphy still supports him and appeared by his side during every briefing on the Pando Political reported in 2021. So during the last 3 years, this guy has been in politics. He's been rubbing his hands with former governors and rubbing his hands with the governors who are both Republicans and Democrats. See, and I want to highlight that part. So you see this hostile workplace environment, this white supremacist workplace environment, right? You see this, right? Notice how it was condoned by both Democrats. So as you can see, it doesn't really matter who you have in office. It doesn't matter at all who you have in office, because at the end of the day, both sides, right? Both sides condone bad cops. Both sides condones cops who abuse people. Both sides condones cops who are racist. And as a side note, Johnny says, reparations, I believe in it. And if you don't, that's great, but you're not going to derail the conversation. So you can behave or you can leave. Pick a pick. So anyways, back to the story. Although Callahan has faced criticism in the past over his leadership, Murphy still supports him and appeared by his side. So Murphy still supports him. Governor Phil Murphy, Democrat, still supports him, despite the fact that so many New Jersey State police officers have come forward and said that this guy is a racist. And it shows you the Joe Biden Democrats. The Joe Biden Democrats who are the liberals, the fake white allies. The ones who put Black Lives Matter in their profile pictures, but it's still gonna call the police on a black guy if they dare show up in their rich white neighborhoods. Yeah. See, these are the types of people that I find to be fascinating, because see, these are the people who, if you were to talk to them and have a serious conversation, you will find that these people are more racist than the so-called racist right-winger. Except the racist right-winger will tell you they are racist and they are proud of it. The only difference between that person and a so-called Democrat is their Facebook status and the type of emojis that they like to use. Oh, and maybe a few social media pages here and there. Actually, really, that doesn't really even matter anymore, because I'm seeing a bunch of so-called liberals post some of the most racist, vile stuff that I've seen. All over the internet. It wasn't the hardcore racist right-wing Republican that was going after Kyrie Irving. Those were your liberals. Let me ask you a question. Who's going after Kanye again? Was it the Republicans? I mean, you ain't got to agree or disagree with anything that Kanye said. What I can say is, I think some of that smoke should have definitely went to Brett Favre, Ezra Miller. I mean, Meryl Streep had so much to say, right? Meryl Streep had so much to say. She had so much to say about Kyrie Irving, about Kanye West, about everything else. But when it came to Roman Polanski, wow, she was standing up clapping. But Meryl Streep couldn't be prouder. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love him. Woo! Go Roman. Go Roman. I'm Team Roman. That was Meryl Streep. But then Kanye, a man who clearly has issues, he's fully admitted it. I mean, the man put the word bipolar on an album color, on a freaking album cover. And like Dave Chappelle said, people say, oh, well, that's no excuse. Yes, it is. You got people out there watching Ezra Miller in the Flash movie. Well, he's just a very confused man. He's just a very, very confused man. Listen. Very confused man. Okay? He's a very confused man. He's a very troubled man. Right, but then Kanye, it's... Why are you defending him? Okay? Why? See, and it really, really shows you the dichotomy of empathy, the separation. Because when I read stories like this, and I'm seeing anti-black racism, I'm seeing a white supremacist running the New Jersey State Police, and you had a Republican governor, Chris Christie, and then you get a Democrat governor, Phil Murphy, both white men, both suspected white supremacists, but from different political parties. And yet you get the same results. A racist running the state police in New Jersey. Ain't that something? So it didn't matter if you put the Republican, the real tubby guy, Chris Christie, or Phil Murphy, right? You got the same results. Same results? How do you get the same results? You get the same white supremacist police superintendent under both parties. I thought the Republicans were bad. But Joe Biden says, hey, we shouldn't defund the police. We should fund the police. That's what Joe Biden said. And I got to be honest with you. I'm finding that Joe Biden is worse than Republicans. To be quite honest with you. When it comes to the police, at least the Republicans, they didn't fund the police this much. See, Joe Biden's just throwing money at a problem. Just like Phil Murphy is here in New Jersey. They didn't change anything. They didn't change a thing in New Jersey, in Washington State, in California, and in New York. All these so-called liberal strongholds, when are they going to bring accountability to the police? Never, because they're too busy being friends with the white supremacists. In the documents, Burnham Douglas, the law firm representing the troopers, these are New Jersey State troopers who are suing New Jersey and the New Jersey State Police. The law firm representing the troopers cites allegations from those who experienced discrimination because of their race, gender, or sexual orientation. The documents also allege, and also show that around 84% of the 3,181 troopers employed by the New Jersey State Police are white males, even though the law enforcement agency serves one of the most diverse states in the nation. Blacks or African Americans made up 15.3% of New Jersey's population as of July 2022, according to the U.S. Census Bureau data, while Asians made up 10.3% and Hispanics and Latinos were 21.5%. Wow. Michelle Douglas, an attorney with Burnham Douglas, said in the documents that the hiring and promotion of minorities within the New Jersey State Police was abysmal. Brian Polite, one of the plaintiffs named in the lawsuits and the only black male major in the New Jersey State Police, was bypassed for promotion and was the subject of racist remarks, according to the documents. Polite is the commanding officer of the sections that oversee that oversee the recruiting unit and diversity and inclusion unit. So he would know. He would know. He's the commanding officer of the sections that oversee the recruiting unit and the diversity and inclusion unit. So he's he's the commanding officer. This guy, Brian Polite, over recruiting. So he knows who goes in and out of there. And also he's over diversity and inclusion. So he knows if you're being diverse and including people. I mean, you have to admit, I mean, the man kind of would know what he's talking about, right? Right? New Jersey State Police, led by Superintendent Patrick Callahan, has been accused of workplace violations by 17 current and former troopers who allege in lawsuits that they experienced discrimination, retaliation, and harassment because they belong to minority groups. Yeah. 17 of them. And you think there's no truth to this? So 17 law enforcement officers, people who you would trust, who at least I wouldn't trust them. I don't trust cops. But people that a lot of other people would trust, judges, lawyers, politicians. You think 17 of them are just gonna just gonna get together and just make up something like this? When New Jersey has a history of this kind of stuff? Oh, yes, they do. You don't know? You don't know how racist the police are in New Jersey. Well, here, let me show you something. New Jersey police told to not pull over black people. I want you guys to see this here. There's a very interesting thing. So, this is New Jersey Spotlight News. More than 2 decades after New Jersey instituted reforms meant to end racial profiling of motorists by the state police, new data shows that troopers are still more likely to search, cite, and arrest black and Hispanic drivers than white drivers. And state police officers are more likely to use physical force against blacks and Hispanics after traffic stops than they are with white drivers, according to analysis of new data by New Jersey Spotlight News. Over the past 3 years, officers wrote summons in a greater percentage of traffic stops for black and or Hispanic motorists than they did after stopping white drivers. The analysis of state police traffic stop data for 2018, 2019, and 2020 found. So from 3 different years, they're actually finding this. It's kind of hard to argue when you're getting it from multiple years. Even though the number of white motorists stopped by officers was nearly triple that of blacks during that time. More blacks were physically searched, more had their vehicles searched, and more were arrested than whites. So you're pulling over more white people, and then you're finding reasons to just search black people physically, or their vehicle, or to just arrest them. Use of force by state police in traffic stops was rare, but officers reported using force roughly twice as often in stops involving Hispanics than whites, and 4 times more often in stops of black motorists.